From the Center for Youth Advocacy and Networking, from the Commuters for Change, Giselle Manuel. From Health Justice, Ralph de Golacion. From the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, Juan Miguel Villarba Torres. Jose Robredo Institute, Dr. Robert C. Multiply Ed Philippines, John Lloyd Contesa. From the Philippine Legislators Committee on Population and Development, Maria Aurora Kilala. From REID Foundation, Karen Valenzuela. And Safe Travel Philippines, Ann Camille Fajardo. Social Watch Philippines, Alce Kitalag. And from the Makati Business Club, Gita Kiswani. And may we also acknowledge the entire DBCC family, the support staff. Good morning to all of you. That's all, Madam. Chair.
To proceed with the presentation of the Development Budget Coordination Committee. May we now start with the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas.
Madam Speaker.
May we now recognize Deputy Governor Zeno Ronald Abenoja for the presentation.
Madam Speaker. Speaker, may I be recognized? Madam, may I make a parliamentary inquiry?
Please proceed.
Madam Chair, thank you for recognizing me on my parliamentary inquiry. But before I begin, I would like to make a short manifestation. I would like to thank you and congratulate you, Speaker Romualdez, Majority Leader Marcos, and Minority Leader Libanan, and the entire leadership for the opening remarks you made, along with Speaker, on the abolishment of the small committees after third reading, as it was done in the past, or as it was practiced, and that the bicameral conference committee will now be open to the public, as well as the institutionalization of civil society organizations. This is in line with the pronouncement, of course, of the President in his SONA. And this will be a good step forward for budget transparency and public participation. And I'd like to recognize your efforts at the onset of our budget deliberations. But in line with my
point of order.
Please
There is
proceed,
always-
Honorable Rodriguez.
My point of order is that under of those who are going to interpolate, and then goes to majority. After we have very good points from the Congressman Dasa, but if we allow interventions at this point, then we are going.
首先，我们所有的课程材料不要求大家会英文，就是我们的课程是按照线下传统的硕士项目训练的这个标准，但是我们将其中英文的部分大部分翻译成了中文，或者使用中文讲解的方式。 教学视频的方式帮助大家理解。我们在线上项目里边，每一门课每个周会安排，线上的这个 office hour， 大家可以有机会跟教授面对面的去交流自己的问题。另外我们 ASU Library 我们的图 相关资源。另外，我们定期也会组织一些线上的讲座。
Understanding that because the GAB will not be filed until September 1st, my question is, perhaps because maybe I'm a first termer, so please enlighten and satisfy my curiosity. Why does it take so long for the GAB to be filed, considered
Here on my call to my point of order.
Madam
that's there in the NEP has to be encoded manually. Would need that time in terms of the preparation and the printing.
thank you, Madam Chair. If I may just
Before you proceed to your next point, may I recognize Ronnie Puno.
Yes, I just want to ask, since we're already talking points of order and parliamentary inquiries, has this converted already into a committee hearing instead of a briefing?
Sorry, there's feedback. So we're unable to hear the queries. If I may request the Honorable Puno to
Yes.
kindly
Thank you,
reiterate.
Madam Chair. I was just inquiring.
Yes, because hearings are only allowed once the GAB has been formally filed. Conduct F, which is a prerequisite for the filing of the GAB.
But I understand from the rules, Madam Chair, that the speaker can waive the 5-day requirement and allow a hearing to begin conducted immediately. Just at a loss as to why we're having a briefing instead of a hearing, and then later on in the proceedings, we will then convert this briefing into a hearing, while we can just make this a hearing from day one.
The determining factor at the moment is the length of to the GAB will be filed in a week or so. So we cannot conduct hearings on the GAB given that the GAB has not been filed and subsequently referred to the Committee on Appropriations.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point, but I really don't understand why it has to be a briefing instead of a hearing. Since the senior deputy speaker is here, I believe we might have a quorum in the be read into the minutes of the first reading and be assigned already to the Appropriations Committee so that the committee can take cognizance and jurisdiction already over this matter. The committee has no jurisdiction over anything that is going on.
So in the technical sense, we are unable to conduct a hearing on the GAB, given that the GAB is yet to be filed. So that is the subject matter of the hearings later on. It is the GAB. So now what we're conducting the briefings on would be the macroeconomic assumptions and details on the sources of financing, which will then feed into the NEP, the GAB, essential sources to be able to finance the expenditures as stated in the NEP, which would later be turned to the GAB. So that is why the BESF would be turned over. And then after that, we would have to conduct the hearings on the BESF, macroeconomic assumptions, sources of financing. After that, we can determine that there is enough sources of financing to finance the expenditures listed on the NEP.
Thank you for your explanation, Madam Chair. I will leave the matter there, but I will serve notice when Congress is in session or the House is in session as a point of order again, and because I believe that it's important that the Committee on Appropriations assume jurisdiction already in a formal way.
Deputy Speaker Puno, may I recognize Honorable Brian Pope?
Madam Chair, considering we've already discussed the situation with the hearing versus briefing, in the interest also have made time to be here, brief us today. Maybe we could proceed. I'm very interested to hear what they have to say.
Thank you very much. Before we proceed with the presentation of the BSP, may we request the technical team? It's a bit challenging for everyone inside the plenary to hear. Actually, that's why we've been asking everyone to repeat their statements, because it's a little bit hard for us to hear. There's feedback.
Madam Chair, Vigas, unless he withdraws his motion.
The ruling of the chair is we will proceed today as a briefing, not a hearing.
Okay, thank you very much. But I would just like to clarify that the sequence is as Honorable Rodriguez remembers, and I hope we modify it. Independence. And then majority, right? Honorable Rodriguez.
We agree with that, and that is why there's a listing here, and there is the minority. There is an independent group, and we have the majority. And then it will be alternating, but
Yes.
always starting with the minority, then the independent, Madam Chair, and then the majority. But we have to proceed already.
Yes, thank you.
Otherwise, if we allow parliament really start the hearing. The reason why this is a hearing, Madam Chair, is because the GAB has not yet been filed but because of the lack of material time, and we want to finish this budget for the development of our country, this will just be a briefing because there can be no hearing. There's no general appropriations bill filed yet and referred to the on first reading to the committee. Often we go into the hearing itself. But what happens now? The same banana. There will be interpellations up to August 31, and then we have September 1. But we are going to adopt in the committee the briefing here to be converted to a hearing once we already have this GAB, General Appropriations Bill already pending in the plenary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That the proper is the briefing and deliberations on the financing framework and aggregate expenditures. Third is the filing of the GAB. Fourth is the detailed deliberations of the NEP only after the GAB is formally referred to the Committee on Appropriations. I would also like to assure the Honorable Chanco that we will follow that sequence. Majority. May I now proceed with the presentations? I would like to recognize the Honorable Deputy Governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Deputy Governor Zino Ronald Abenoja, for the presentation.
Chair, good morning, Honorable Congressman, Honorable House Speaker Representative, Micaela Swansing, and honorable representatives present at today's briefing. Good morning to all of you. It is my privilege to present our assessment of the of the national government budget for the fiscal year 2026. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is a resource. Well,
May I, before I recognize the Honorable Tino, would it be possible let's just let the BSP finish their presentation
Madam
first.
Head of agency to make the presentation, but I do not see the governor of the Bangko Sentral here. To make the presentation.
Of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Governor Eli Remolona Jr. requesting to be excused from today's DBCC briefing, as this coincides with the second high-level bilateral meeting between the Bangko first regular session of Congress, and it is scheduled to be held today. So given that this is bilateral in between two central banks, and the House leadership decided to allow Governor Remolona to be excused from today's hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, but the chair recognizes that it is customary for the heads of agencies to present during the DBCC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we will provide a briefing as a resource institution of the DBCC. Let me inflation is cooling down in the past few months. If we can recall, inflation in peak of 8.7% 2 years ago, January and February of 2023, and that was caused mainly by the uptick in energy inflation as well as subsequently food inflation. But since then, inflation has gone down. Here, 2 points, Madam Chair. First, food inflation, the green part of the bar charts that I am showing has gone down in recent months. In fact, it has reached negative inflation, year-on-year inflation in some months in the second quarter. This reduction in our inflation. But perhaps the second point is equally important. The blue bar refers to the core inflation. And this is what we call the underlying pressure on inflation. And that is important because inflation that has more meaning in terms of the inflation outlook moving forward. If core or underlying inflation is going down, then we have moderate moving forward. Now, if you go to the next slide, on the part of the BSP on where inflation will be in the coming months. This is shown in the chart in the screen. As we can see, inflation is anticipated to continue to decline in 2025. In fact, it will be below 2% the rest of the year on average. The target in terms of inflation average for the year is 3% plus 1%, or 2 up to 4%. This year, we think we will average less than 2%, but still remain within inflation that we are experiencing in 2025. However, it will remain moderated, partly driven by stable international oil prices. Given the near-term outlook on output, what has been the response of Filipinas to help manage the inflation percent, from 2% all the way to 6.5% to help anchor inflation expectations and help moderate inflation. However, when we started seeing better inflation numbers, including core inflation inflation expectations, the central bank started dialing back its policy rate. And that is what we show here. Since August of last year, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas interest rates by about 125 basis points. So from 6% interest rates has gone down to 5.25%. And in the latest press statement from the Monetary Board, the central bank is looking to continue to have a easing monetary policy will remain data dependent, and that could be examined every meeting date of the Monetary Board on the monetary policy stance. On the right hand, action by the central bank, we reduce the reserve requirements for large banks. This is the portion of deposits received by banks that they have to keep in their vaults to service unforeseen withdrawals or sudden needs of liquidity. It used to be as high as 20%, but that is a costly friction or part of intermediation cost. Right now, we have reduced it to 5% effective March of this year. What that implies is that it provides more liquidity into the system for more credit activities of the central bank. It reduces the cost of banks so they can better serve their clients. So we think these two moves are very important in managing inflation as well as facilitating the efficiency of the banking system. Now, looking at the banking system, how are they performing so far? In this next slide, we show that the Philippine banking continue to be resilient to support domestic economic growth. First set of numbers continue to expand so that it can provide services, including credit services, to households and businesses. At the same time that it is expanding to have adequate capital and continue to be liquid so that it is being managed well and can react or continue to be resilient even with unforeseen shocks. So the capital adequacy ratio, CAR, the liquidity ratios are all above the minimum regulatory thresholds that the Bangko Sentral has set for big commercial banks. And then finally, the third of numbers at the bottom refers to the quality of the assets, particularly the quality of the loan portfolio of banks. The NPL, or the non-performing loans ratio, they have adequate allowances to cover for this particular portion of the assets of the banking system. So the non-performing loans are steady and are well covered. Even as the banking system continue to grow and remain resilient, one advocacy of the central bank is to facilitate access to formal financial services by a broader segment of our population. And so far, on the left side, we show the share of digital payments to total retail payments. Back after the proportion of digital payments is about 20% of total retail payments. That has gone up quite dramatically, and it now 7% of total. On the right side, we also show the progress of opening formal financial or banking accounts for the general population. Deposit accounts. Basic deposit accounts are no-frills accounts. The opening requirements are very minimal. The opening balance is small, and the maintaining balance is actually zero. And we can show that a greater portion of the population has this type of basic deposit accounts since 2019. If you look at 2019, about 4 million deposit accounts were opened, but now we have more than 26 million accounts by the adult population of the country. So overall, we think that the banking system remains resilient and continue to provide more resources, more services to a broader segment of our population. And we will continue to do so moving forward, Madam Chair. If you look at the external transactions, we show in this slide two charts, Madam Chair. On the left side is the summary of our trade transactions. Trade in goods, the blue chart, the blue bar, portion of our external transactions with the rest of the world. Look at goods transactions, it's a net deficit. However, if you look at services, and this covers the revenues of business, process outsourcing industry, as well as tourism yellow bar, that's a positive. And if we add into it the remittances of OFWs, the green bar, then it could even be a larger positive number for our external transactions. So this services and income portion partially offsets the deficit that we are experiencing in terms of our trade in. Now, how much buffer do we have in terms of responding to external shocks? One such buffer is the international reserve. Right now, it's about 106 billion dollars, and that amount is sufficient to pay worth of imports of goods and services. If you look at our obligations, our principal payments for the next 12 months, that amount than 3 times in a span of 12 months in terms of interest and principal payments, Madam Chair. So look, we do have an adequate amount of buffers to help us manage external shocks. We now move, Madam Chair, to the proposed near-term macroeconomic assumptions that underlie the budget that are being presented, that is being presented to Congress. And we show here the key numbers. If you look at headline inflation, it could average between 2 to 3% this year. In fact, our latest numbers that it could even be below 2%. And then by 2026, it could average 2 to 4%. That is the assumption that is being adopted for 2026. It coincides with the inflation target for that year. For Dubai crude oil prices, it's about 60